Hello, this is the future calling. TKSmith examines the future in her poem Sci-Fi, which is the second poem set for study for Reimagine Worlds, Year 12 Extension English. This poem comes from TKSmith's collection, Life on Mars. Smith's poetry is in this collection looks at the nexus between heaven and earth, the metaphysical, the physical, the real, the unreal, the tangible, the intangible. And in her poetry she posits that the universe is a space or idea or construct that could absorb all of our questions, all of our wonderings. Her poem's quite metaphysical in nature. It's a lyric poem that uses conceits or contrasts to describe ideas that are intangible or quite intellectual. So it's things beyond the physical. So this lyric poem is a montage of metaphorical images that speculate about the possibilities of the future. It's reminiscent of John Donne's 1623 meditation, No Man is an Island, where he posits that all humanity is interconnected through our relationship with God, and therefore we're not separate, we're a part of a whole. Smith's vision for the future reflects the postmodern questioning of meta-narratives that govern our society, such as the limitations of gender and language. The poem ends with a hopeful description of humanity drifting through space, which will be once and for all scrutable and safe. What she proposes we will be safe from is unknown. But Smith's version of the future is very much like her idea of heaven. The poem Sci-Fi offers the reader Smith's vision of this future by establishing an atmosphere in which she describes various forms of evolution. The speculative nature of the poem sees it fit more traditionally in the science fiction genre than her other poems, and of course that makes sense seeing that the poem is in fact called Sci-Fi. Smith proposes several realms that may evolve in the future: the earth, the physical environment of earth, people moving beyond the limitations of gender and their physical body, the shift of language, and the Hubble telescope becomes a symbol of the nexus between the past, the present and the future. It's a historical object gazing into the future. The first form of evolution Smith focuses on in Sci-Fi is that of the physical environment. There'll be no edges but curves, she proposes, clean lines, pointing only forwards into the future. The poem begins as the speaker introduces the recurring concept of the infinite through a description of concrete space and objects, so that's real or tangible space and objects. If Smith's future is smooth and curved, then the past has a hard spine and dog-eared corners like a worn book, suggesting historical limitations in the conditions of the metaphorical book of the past. The next form of evolution described is that of the physical self. This speculative version of the future focuses on the state of humanity within it, envisaging a world in which the distinctions of gender are empty. The speaker relates how, while gender will still exist, the distinction between male and female will ultimately be a purposeless one, as sex, having outlived every threat, will gratify only the mind, which is where it will exist. Thus, in this vision of the future, the human body has evolved past the point of its own physicality and is marked more by the mind than anything else. This moving beyond the physical self, or the evolution of the self, extends further towards the end of the poem, in which the speaker describes humanity as weightless and unhinged, drifting in space, eons, even from our own moon, implying a total severance from the human body and the very earth from which it once arose and inhabited. A sense of limitlessness is imparted in this evolution of the self, floating in space as opposed to the self grounded on earth, as it floats forever onward? Or is this weightless and unhinged physical body that of an astronaut floating in space, not limited by gravity? The evolution of language is another form of evolution, Smith imagines, not surprising really, seeing so she's a poet and words are her tools. And we know language naturally evolves in response to the shifts and changes in our lives and our society. Smith purports the word son will have been reassigned to a standard uranium neutralizing device found in households and nursing homes. Here the word sun, once used to refer to the star at the centre of the Earth's solar system, which makes life possible on the planet, has evolved or repurposed to refer to a more relevant object, to futuristic human daily life as it drifts further and further from the planet it once called home. Then the Hubble telescope, as described in part 5 of the poem, acts as a dual symbol of both the past and the present. The present connection between the telescope and the future is clear as an object of scientific exploration, aimed towards expanding humanity's knowledge of the universe. In expanding this view of the universe, it becomes possible for humankind to gain a better understanding of its laws and a better picture of what the future holds for Earth and the human race. Smith takes this natural association between the telescope and the future and subverts it by also grounding the telescope in the past. These references to the Hubble are filtered through her memories of her father, who was an engineer on the Hubble, and the time in which the instrument was originally built during Reagan years, a period of time marked by the threat of the button, so this is the Cold War, the threat of possible nuclear war and the fear of communists and anyone who seemed a bit different. So by associating the telescope with a more antiquated time, it becomes a symbolic object of antiquity in and of itself, contrasting significantly with its other associations, with scientific progress and the future. So let's have a look at the poem. It's short, but it's powerful. Let's look at this original couplet. There will be no edges but curves, clean lines pointing only forward. The poem opens with this emphatic statement. It doesn't allow for other options. There will be no edges. There will be, not there may be, there could possibly be, I'd like there to be. There will be no edges. It's like a decree from above. That it's only curves and these clean lines pointing only forward. So there's no edges, there's no limitations. Is this definitive? Is it emphatic? Or is it a desperate plea? Is it Smith's hope and desire in this poem? So this couplet introduced her ideas of the future, but before we move on to the future, Smith first refers to the past. History, with its hard spine and dog-eared corners, will be replaced with nuance, just like the dinosaurs gave way to mounds and mounds of ice. So we've got the vision of the future with edges and curves and clean lines, contrasted with the hard spine and dog-eared corners of history. The curves and the clean lines are the nuances. So we've again got this postmodern idea from Lyotard, questioning the meta-narratives. There's no absolute truth. It's not definitive. It's not hard edge. It's not absolute corners that are worn and used because they're dog-eared. So these old values from history are dog-eared. They're overdue to be replaced with nuance that allows for multiple ways of understanding. Why? Because these old ideas are dinosaurs. and they've got to emerge from an ice age. The need for language to shift with changing times, evolution and change is inevitable, like the dinosaurs and the ice age, symbols of the past. So this couplet here and the next are linked to imply that the current notions of gender inequality are like dinosaurs, out of date in this simile. So like the dinosaurs. So history and the absolutes are dinosaurs. They're giving way. What are they giving away? What are they giving way to? Women will still be women, but the distinction will be empty. So it's proposing that the limitations of gender expectations will be empty. But here we have an enjambment that links these stanzas. Sex, having outlived every threat, will gratify only the mind, which is where it will exist. So the enjambment links these two together. Notice also how emphatic it is. Women will still be women. It's not may still be. We'd like women to still be women, but it is absolute. Women will still be women. But the distinction will be empty. So the limitations of these binaries, or the old edges, will no longer be relevant. There'll be curves. Sex having outlived every threat. So this I understand is to mean people's gender biases and the sense of feeling threatened by another gender. It's not going to exist, only in your mind. We have to ask why Smith identified gender here. Because she's a woman, she will have experienced prejudice that is directed at women, the artificial obstacles and constructs that often limit women's experience of the world. So in her vision of the future, even though she's emphatic, to me it seems hopeful. She doesn't want those gender biases or gender limitations to be evident. That's quite a conversational tone. Very personal. We've got the first person collective pronouns. We'll dance for ourselves before mirrors studded with golden globes. So it's a joint experience. We'll have fun for kicks. We'll dance for ourselves. And mirrors implies that we're being self-reflective. We're examining ourselves. But we still have the emphatic wheel dance. It's absolute. And we've got this kind of cliched movie scene of the mirror with all of the lights around it. But it's connected to this next. So we've got before mirrors studded with golden globes. The oldest amongst us will recognise that glow. So the glow from the golden globes. But the word sun will have been reassigned, more enjambment here, reassigned to the standard uranium neutralising device found in households and nursing homes. I think it's quite interesting to see how the different couplets are connected. Still we have a conversational tone. First person collective pronouns, but the oldest among us, ironically, who understand the original meaning of the word sun, are now those in households and nursing homes using the standard uranium neutralising device. And this is implying that no one can escape these shifts and change of language or of aging, of the passing of time. And language is fluid because it's a reflection of our society and culture. So these old words are superseded. More conversational tone, a first person collective pronoun. But this seems quite negative. This is more of a positive. And yes, so again, very much conversational, particularly with the comma here that's creating clauses, as if the speaker's answering someone. And yes, we'll live to be much older. thanks to popular consensus. So there's a lovely bit of irony here, as if we can choose not to age because that's how we want it. Okay, so we'll live much older thanks to popular consensus, not because we've evolved, not because of scientific advancements, but because everyone wants it. That's enough. So there's a little bit of irony. Then we've got this idea of weightlessness again, and it has dual implications, that of weightlessness due to a lack of gravity in space, but also perhaps weightlessness because we don't have worries. So here we have weightless and unhinged, more enjambment. So we've got weightless, unhinged, eons from even our own moon will drift into the haze of space, which will be, once and for all, scrutable and safe. So more enjambment here. So all these, even though the poem is set out in couplets apart from the final line, the ideas are very much linked to each other. So eons even from our own moon will drift into the haze of space, which will be, once and for all, scrutable and safe. So it's again emphatic or definitive, but it's the haze of space. So it's interesting. Will drifts, that's very emphatic or definitive, but the haze of space. You can't see things in a haze. You can't identify them clearly. So space is a haze. In other poems, space is silent, as in the Universe, a motion picture soundtrack. Or it's dark. It's black also in that poem. Here it's a haze. In My God, It's Full of Stars, the universe is a nurturing mother or an angry father. So space is personified in that it takes on all of the characteristics that the poet proposes it does, or the speaker proposes it does. It's allowing for other possibilities despite the emphatic or the definitive tone. And for all, so which will be, once and for all, scrutable and safe. So again, this is definitive, but really it sounds much more like a dream or a longing. Space will be scrutable, as in understandable and moral and measurable, and trustworthy and safe. So despite the emphatic tone, it's not definitive, but it's more like a emphatic desire. And this, of course, relates to what we've just seen. So in the haze of space, which will be once and for all scrutable and safe, so it's very definitive. It's a bit like we'll live to be much older thanks to popular consensus. It's because we want it so much, we're going to live to be older. Because we want space to be scrutable and safe, we're going to get through the haze. And so in this way, the universe becomes like heaven. So these are some of the key ideas that come out in this poem, some of the propositions of evolution of the future that's absorbed by space. We've got the physical and the concrete world, the physical self, shifting language, the Hubble telescope, science past and the future. And amongst all of this, we have this idea of the universe absorbing our hopes and our dreams.